Everything that can be digitized will be. I didn't say that. Angela Merkel said it last night at the economic conference here in Berlin. It's exciting to be here. I want to thank the NOAA group and all of you for being here. I cannot imagine anything more important than creating a new generation of entrepreneurs. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about innovation, economics, the benefits of innovation, and frankly, jobs. And jobs solve most problems in political systems. And I've become convinced that there is an emerging new platform around energy and health and transportation, machine learning, a new opportunity for jobs and European innovation and German innovation, especially in Berlin. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to start by talking a little bit about the history of Google. Everybody knows that Larry and Sergey founded the company around search and 10 blue links. But the background is quite interesting because when they looked at search, search didn't produce very good answers. So they invented a new algorithm. They didn't do something like everyone else. They actually invented a completely new way of organizing digital information. The way you do this is you start with first principles, not established wisdom. You break the rules by coming up with a new idea, right? We think at Google of this as sort of searching for better answers, searching for new kinds of solutions. So what's interesting is that you keep asking things to go better. Interesting, in 2000, Jennifer Lopez wore a green dress at the Academy Awards that people became so obsessed with that it broke the internet, if you will. And you could not find pictures of this dress on Google. And so some of our engineers said, what we want to do is we want to build Google image search, which today, of course, is used by billions of people every day, literally because we had a new need. And then, of course, someone at Google realized that not everyone speaks English in the world, right? What a shock to Americans. And all of a sudden, they invented Google Translate. And 7 years ago, I sat on an equivalent stage here in Berlin and demonstrated someone speaking in German on a phone, getting translated into English, and listening on the other end of the phone. The first time, I think, in history. Again, how did that happen? It was a new idea because it does it without a dictionary. Same thing with maps. People could not find locations in Berlin and in many other countries, and we did maps for that reason. Today, Maps is by far the largest mapping service in the world for many good reasons. Another example, mobile phones, right? Mobile phones are smaller. Everyone here uses a mobile phone. I use a mobile phone, so forth. I use an Android phone, by the way. And your fingers are too big, so you can use voice search. I never thought it would work. I figured voice search will never be as good as fast as I can type. And the answer is it's faster than I can type on a mobile phone. How interesting. Last week, we introduced Google Photos. Now, what new thing could you possibly do with photos? People have built huge companies around photos, and photos are everywhere, and Google gets a gazillion photos from Android and other platforms. Well, one of our engineering teams thought what we should do is take image recognition and apply it to your photos. And so now you can take all those digital photos you have for the last 20 years and type your family's name or your dog's name or whatever, and it will find pictures pretty reliably of family members and cats and dogs and objects and places and so forth. It's incredibly useful, right? And that innovation alone will completely redefine the photo space. How did it happen? Somebody had a new idea. Somebody thought about this in a new way. But this keeps going. We had this bizarre idea that you could build balloons that would go up and down in space, following now in the southern hemisphere, to guide themselves and float for a couple of days and provide LTE services to extremely remote parts of the developing world. You say, oh, well, that doesn't really matter. For the people who have no other reach of connectivity, this is a it's just extraordinary, the impact that it's having. When it was first presented to me, I was absolutely convinced and told the engineers that it would never work. It shows you how right I am. And again, it's because of technological innovation, but also the sense of entrepreneurship that's so profound. So we're busy making even bigger bets, and let me give you a couple. I think in Europe, Europeans eat better. You're not as, frankly, heavy as Americans. Every American seems to be destined to diabetes along the way, given our very poor quality of food. So we have this diabetes epidemic, and one of our engineering teams invented a contact lens that we've now licensed with a European manufacturer that has the world's smallest battery that will show you your blood glucose states. You don't have to do the pin pricking. Now, for the emerging number of people who are going to be pre-diabetic and diabetic, this is a godsend. And every one of you will know somebody who has this problem. How do we do this? It was somebody's idea. How do you take the world's smallest battery, a computer chip, and put them in a contact lens inside of your eye? It's extraordinary. That will eventually save many, many lives. But what about cars, right? Everybody here, we just heard that automobiles are 20% of the German economy. And cars are incredibly important. Well, what's the most interesting thing about cars? 1.2 million people are killed on the roads of the world every year in car accidents. That's 1.2 million families with a tragedy, with a funeral, and all of that. Right? In America, that number is 31,000. That number per year is the lowest number on a miles per driven basis that it's ever been. That's 31,000 American families. In Germany, because frankly you all do a better job in the drinking department, shocking, and you're more law-abiding, I already knew that, you have a lesser percentage of deaths per mile, but it's still on the order of 3,000. That's 3,000 German families with a terrible tragedy. If you imagine automatic driving in one form or another, it makes perfect sense. And in fact, it becomes clear that many tasks that can now be done by computers better than humans should be done better by computers than humans, because humans make mistakes and computers, when done properly, will not. So in our case, we embarked on this project to do automatic driving. And what's interesting about automatic driving is that we didn't provide the rules. We used machine learning and literally drove the car over and over and over again, and the computer learned the rules of driving by observing human drivers. And obviously these human drivers had kill buttons and other ways of stopping in case there was an accident, which there has not been due to the cause of the computer, Now what's interesting is that 100 years from now, I'm absolutely convinced that your great-grandchildren and grandchildren will be in the theater here in Germany, and they'll be watching a movie, and they'll see some very young, handsome actor getting into some very advanced German car behind the wheel in an old movie, and they'll giggle, they'll laugh. They'll say, how could you possibly take this young, handsome actor and put them as a driver in a car? That is the stupidest thing you could possibly do. Why are cars not driving them? Because every German car is driven by a computer. That's how profound this insight is. And this is going to happen. And indeed here, because you guys are advanced in much of this, I think you're going to become, there's a good chance you'll become the world leader in connected driving, driverless cars, that sort of thing. So when I think about this as a platform, I think about computing. What are some of the big bets? Well, I think of a world with smart mobile phones, Android or iOS, right? Android's more popular, good. Fast network in between, right? One broadband, whether it's 4G or various forms of fiber. And again, your networks are not as fast as they should be, and you're working on that. And then big-scale cloud computing on the back with machine learning as its core platform. Almost all of you who are entrepreneurs are busy building programs that use the mobile phone as their interface, they depend on a fast network, and they use complicated and powerful dynamics. I use the photos example as one, but I can give you example after example of ones. But I think what's going to happen is each of you will have a wow moment where you're going to say, oh my God, the world has changed again. I remember when Google Earth came out, and I was sitting there, and I thought, this is now almost 10 years ago, I was sitting in my office, and I took myself to the top of Mount Everest, and I imagined myself on the top of Mount Everest, right, as a brave climber, knowing that I'll never get there. And that was my wow moment. I'll give you my wow moments this year. There's a heart surgeon who is taking pictures of a heart and suspending a hologram of that heart right above the heart that he is in fact operating on as it's beating. That's a wow moment. Another person I know was blind, had retinal implants, and can now see well enough to look at me, to turn and look at me and said, I can see with my eyes closed. That was a wow moment for me. This is happening, it's happening systematically, it's making the world a far better place. Now, on the Google side, we're very, very, very committed to this digital world and the development in Europe of an entrepreneurial culture and an entrepreneurial digital culture. There are many reasons for this. I'm quite convinced that all of the new jobs that are going to be created in Europe are going to be created in small, fast-growing companies. Why do I believe that? Because it's true worldwide. These companies are generally known as gazelles. They're companies which invent something new, they solve a problem in a new way, and they grow quite quickly. They may or may not become global companies, but they quickly establish themselves as the new kid on the block with a new solution to an important problem. And the people who lead those things are bold and evocative, and I think many of them are here in the audience. In our case, we're working very, very hard on this. Literally just yesterday, we launched a new competition for young founders in Germany, in Austria and Switzerland called Gründen Live with E.ON, which is your utility power company, and Volkswagen. We had more than 800 new business ideas that were developed as part of this contest program. So we're taking this seriously. We've already announced initially a $100 million venture fund throughout Europe. Now we've increased it to $125 million. And my indication is that we'll continue to increase that level of investment for fairly quickly and for a fairly long time. We're working on some of the many problems that people face in Europe around information. We announced something called the Digital News Initiative. This Digital News Initiative is with the leading news organizations in Europe and in particular in Germany. And we've offered more than 100 million euros to investment in trying to get innovative solutions for digital news, digital information, digital advertising, and so forth to not only support but also encourage and enhance the transition from traditional analog news to digital news for the obvious reasons. But it's interesting that we're just a small player in this transformation that you all are leading. And you're figuring out, and it's clear to me now that you have figured out, that the people who can build these platforms, especially the software-intensive platforms, are going to drive almost everything. The jobs shortage in Europe is estimated to be more than 1 million IT jobs by 2020. I looked at this number, and I think that number is low. I think the shortage is even greater. And that shortage slows your economic growth. It slows the kind of things that you can do. So in order to address this, what you need to do, and this is all well understood, education, 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 more math education, more investment, more capital, more of the kind of engine of entrepreneurship that's represented by you all and the people in this room. So from my perspective, I want to make sure that you know that we're very committed to meeting this challenge. It's something I spend as much of my own time as I can. Google itself cares a lot about this. In many ways, the entrepreneurs that we work with are also our partners and our competitors. Making the ecosystem stronger is how we all move forward, right? There's an old way and a new way. This new way is global and digital. The old way is local and very proud, by the way. There's nothing wrong with it, but it will be displaced by the forces of globalization in a way that is profound. Now, in order to get there, and I'll finish by saying, you've got to get to a European single digital market. Right? As I understand the history, in 1985 or 86, there was a European physical market agreement that essentially unified all of the markets that you sell physical goods to. But it's crazy now, right? From one market to another, from one country to another, the rules are all different for intellectual property and copyright and the way you do business deals and so forth. You can't build businesses that way. And furthermore, you can't build global businesses that operate that way smoothly, and you also can't create the kind of wealth and money and venture without it. So everyone here benefits from a common European digital market. And it's got to address, consumer protection and intellectual property and these cross-border data flows. And I know everyone's concerned about big data, and I understand why, given the history and so forth, But the fact of the matter is there are going to be these large databases. They will be to some degree regulated by European law, but you shouldn't fear them. You should take advantage of them and figure out a way to make some money on top of them. When I think about this, I become more and more optimistic. And I'll finish by saying another quote from somebody I respect a lot. Many jobs will disappear because they can be replaced by machines. But I'm convinced that many more jobs will be created through the value of data. Who said that? A great American? No, Angela Merkel, last night as well. So finally, we see we have alignment. We have the leaders of the industry here in the room. We have the leaders of the country speaking clearly on this matter. We are in alignment. We are organized. We are ready to make this happen. I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so glad you guys are spending all day here on this subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. It's good to see that our leaders are still saying the right things. This was very impressive. Thank you.
I actually do pay attention to what the leaders of these countries say, and we're getting, the messages are correct. Now they have to be implemented. But it really helps when the senior leaders in each of the leading countries is saying the same things.
Well, at least the direction is right, and we will help them progressing to the target and make Europe a more competitive place and bring out great entrepreneurs. We have time for 3 questions, maybe?
You are in charge. You are actually the
you
founder of this.
You don't want me to be in charge, Eric. You have other appointments.
You're actually in charge.
Okay, I'm very fast also. Who is first? Question for Eric. That's quite interesting. Nobody thought about a question while you spoke. Either you answered everything or it's too late in the day. Lars Hinrichs.
This lady has a question. Yes, sir. Yes,
Hi, Eric. Maybe you share some bit of the robots at Google.
We haven't announced what we're doing in that space. We have purchased quite a few interesting robotics companies that are amazing technology. I think the one that is probably the best known is Boston Dynamics, which built sort of robots that could walk and move in a way that allows them to, for example, go up hills and so forth. All we've said that we're going to do there is we're not going to use them for military purposes, but we're still trying to figure out exactly how to tell our story. We have not decided yet.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
From Deutsche Welle. My question is, you have this year perhaps $3 billion to invest in new companies. Some of these companies are assembled here in this room. What do you think, in which companies will you invest?
We typically, thank you. So we typically buy about a company a week, in my observation, and they're almost always very small technical teams that have done something much better than anyone else. So in advertising, in mapping, in machine learning, in some of the life sciences area, these would be examples. We relatively seldom buy large companies, think of Motorola or YouTube or things like those, and that's a much rarer decision. But I think if you look at our core technology, it's all in these manipulating images, doing search better, doing advertising better, doing some of the other things, finishing out the portfolio of products.
You're answering much faster than Oliver Samwer last night, so you may sneak one in more if it's okay.
Hi. You were talking a lot about the future priorities for people in this room to solve some of the challenges that humanity faces to solve. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about some of the humanitarian or global warming crises that we also have to solve as we are future leaders in creating the future in this room.
So speaking as an American, I'd like to establish a basic scientific fact that climate change is real. Speaking as your American representative, I'd like to speak the truth on this matter. I suspect that everyone in this audience believes that, and I hope that our US friends will also occasionally acknowledge the actual scientific facts here. And if we don't do something, we will literally be toast. The problem with climate change is that as CO2 advances, it takes many, many thousands of years for it to eliminate. So one of the things to understand is that the CO2 emergency is really not a question of stopping the crisis, but rather slowing the crisis. So if we can slow the rate of creation of CO2, perhaps in 100 years or 1,000 years, very smart successors of ours will come up with ways to permanently change it. So from Google's perspective, we've invested at least $1 billion, perhaps more, in renewable energy of one kind or another, largely in investment-wise, and it turns out it's good business. So it's good financially, but it's also good for the planet, partly to offset our own uses. We have a number of other projects, but the most important thing, and I'll give you an example from Germany. Germany has made a decision to eliminate nuclear power. It was a decision made some years ago, and is also the world's leader in solar and wind, essentially with a 30% renewable standard, which is extraordinary, and congratulations. You got there because you figured out a way, for example, with solar, to reduce the cost of solar installation on a per-house basis very much better than Americans did. And you've benefited from inexpensive Chinese panels and technology invented in Germany. One German firm, by the way, invented an inverter that could automatically cycle itself into the right frequency for AC to put itself back online. You know, amazing innovation. So in order to fix that, the energy industry is going to have to deal with the intermittency of renewables, which means a smarter grid. And a smarter grid is a software problem. And think of it in the following way, and here's a business opportunity for Germans. Since you've chosen to eliminate base load, and you're the world's leader in the adoption of solar, which is shocking given the weather around here, separate discussion. Since you've managed to do both, you are at the tip of the arrow in building an intelligent grid. If you build that grid, that will become a huge exporter, huge profits in euros to German firms that do that. There's a lot of software, there's a lot of hardware engineering, and it's a perfect example of signals control, network control, and essentially IP planning. So I cannot say enough about the potential there. Thank you. Did we lose Noah?
I have one more question over here.
Okay, go ahead.
Yesterday we had a discussion about healthcare, and so my question to Google: what is the vision of healthcare for Google, or where is the Google of healthcare?
You know, we've tried various things in the U.S. around healthcare, and our current focus is to invent certain tools and technologies. I mentioned the contact lens. We have another project which is using a band that you put around your wrist to use to detect nanoparticles to detect early cancer. This is amazing technology. We've discussed that publicly. We have a project called the Genome Project, which is using Google data servers will host full genomes for research purposes. So we're sort of in the middle of the research side of it. We are not ourselves doing large-scale health machine learning. People have discussed that, but it's not our core business. But I would tell you that there is a very, very large machine learning healthcare IT opportunity. Take these very large records that healthcare organizations have, especially in countries where you can get access to that. The best known example there is the National Health Service in the UK. There are others. Israel has such an example. And go and then study diseases as reported in hospitals, and then back solve to figure out what the actual solutions are. And to me, that's a very large business. It's very important. It will really help in healthcare costs and service delivery, because everyone's getting older, all the countries are aging, and it's a huge business opportunity for entrepreneurs in this room.
Eric, thank you so much. You already had a question yesterday.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you all.